Today we're going to do a painting of a pumpkin and an apple, kind of a fall scene. And I'm going to start out showing you how to begin if you're doing some kind of a botanical work. And if you're doing something that's a little bit more scientific, you would always do a sketch first on tracing paper. So what I have here is a roll of tracing paper. I'm going to just tear off a piece. And I'll do my drawing first on this tracing paper. I'm going to tape it down so that it doesn't slip around while I'm drawing. And I have to find my pencil. I had it earlier. Now where to go? Okay, just a simple graphite pencil. And to get started, I'm going to just do a shape here. So I have the shape of the outside edge of my paper. Kind of a rough shape. I use my pencil very loosely so that I'm getting some big shapes going to start with. So when I'm drawing something like this, I want to think about where the axis of whatever it is. So this is a pumpkin, kind of a circular shape, and there's an axis that kind of goes through the center of it. So I'm doing a quick sketch of that. Even for this bigger gourd or pumpkin in the back, it's going to have a central area, and it's going to have an axis that comes up through the center there. So in doing something like this, I can determine where the stem will go. So that's one of the main things I do to start with, is trying to figure out on the apple even, there's a place where the stem goes within the core of the apple. So now I've got some basic lines, and now I can start to refine some of those shapes. Drawing a little bit darker with my pencil. And the shape of the pumpkin is not exactly round. It's got kind of a, comes down to a little more fullness down here on this side. And down in here, there's some, looks like a walnut. I can't tell exactly what that is, but something like a walnut here. And it has segments. So I'm trying to figure out where the segments will go. And then I've got this wonderful stalk. Now it's okay to trace something. I'm not against tracing. If you're just learning how to do this, it's okay with me if you do that. You can trace the image and then just transfer it down, or you can draw it. It doesn't have to be a perfect drawing. Remember, we're learning a way to a work, an approach. So there's a lot we're trying to do here, and drawing is one of them, but it's not the only thing. So what will happen with a pumpkin is that there are these segments, and they kind of graduate in width. It turns out that it looks like there's the one in the front here is, there's a couple smaller ones. Usually you get the bigger ones right in the part that's near you. So if I follow the photo, it's not going to be larger right there. But generally speaking, they get narrower toward the side and fuller toward the center. So I've got a basic structure there. I think I could make the stem maybe a little bit more sturdy looking, like widen it slightly down here. And then this one, I'm looking at where does this come, and the fact that it is, I've got it curved more, it comes up more like this, a little bigger. So usually I end up with, I have a little kneaded eraser that I use if I need to erase. Not as critical on a piece of tracing paper as it would be if it were on my paper that I was going to use for painting. But I can take my kneaded eraser and I can make corrections. So I'll make this a little taller. And now I'm looking at where it lines up with the pumpkin behind it, or the gourd behind it. And it's a little taller, a little higher than the stem of the other one. So making it go like here, I'm looking at the relationship between it and what's next to it. And looking at the segments. You can be doing a card for Halloween to send to your grandchildren or somebody. Or on this side, it looks like they're a little thinner, the segments, but that'll look strange. So I'm making it a little wider here. I think I need to bring it out more. Okay. And this, the height of this comes to about here, like what I expected. So you do an ellipse as correctly as you can, of course. And then there's also an axis on something as simple as a glass. So you want to look and see if you have both sides of it fairly similar. This is complex for a beginner. Usually I start with one item for beginners. So if you're a beginner, you don't need to tackle this whole thing. You can just start with one thing, you know, start with the apple or start with the pumpkin, or even just, you know, I'll start by doing something. I'll start with the pumpkin and the apple to start with, just so you get an idea. I'm not sure. These must be cinnamon sticks or something here. Oh my goodness, there's a, I don't know if that's a cockroach or what. I saw them in Louisiana, but I've never seen one here running across my floor. They call them water bugs there. Okay, and then there's a maple leaf here too. Well, I got the proportion wrong here. I think I didn't put my cup a little, it's quite high enough. Bring it up a little higher. When you're drawing a cylindrical object, make sure that you make the edges go around on the outside edge. Make sure you're making it go around, not just coming to a point. I can't see that very well on there, but I think there's a little bit more of a leaf there. Okay, and then on the, there's some boards here. And this texture of the wood here. I can't tell what's in the foreground. It's just going to be kind of abstract. There's some kind of a little pot back here.
A link.
And then behind it, I didn't really leave as much of a background because I don't want to get too involved with things back there, but there's some shapes like a wreath and some leaves, so I'm just going to barely indicate those. Okay, so I have a drawing. And now the question is, how am I going to get it onto my paper? So I'm going to take the drawing. And I'm going to turn it over. There are several ways. One is if you have a transfer sheet already made, you can just use it like carbon paper. But if you don't, you can turn your drawing over like this, and I'll just tape it so it won't. See if I can tape it on here so it will stay in one spot. And now I'm going to draw on the back of my drawing like this, where the lines, where the major lines are. Doesn't have to be exact. Some people go to a window. If you don't have as thin a tracing paper as I have, you can go to a window and let the light come through and you can see your drawing through the window and do this. Or if you have a light box, you can just put your watercolor paper over the drawing and transfer it right onto, trace it onto your paper that way. Might not put that little, whatever it is over there, a little pot or whatever. Okay, so I have pretty much got it on here. And now I'm going to take it to my paper, my watercolor paper. Tape it down again so it won't be moving around. And then I think I need to sharpen my pencil a little bit. And now I'm going to draw over those lines. And it should transfer. If I draw over the line that I just created on the back. And I will check in a second just to make sure. Yeah, it's transferring. It's not the strongest color for darkness, but it still shows where things are basically. I like having a transfer sheet. That's the best way. If you can go to Art Essentials, or you can get what's called Ceril transfer paper. Make sure it's wax free, because then you can just transfer your drawing and you'll get a nice darker line. It takes a little while, so you have to be a little bit patient.
Your drawing is wonderful, and the little honey dipper.
You can't really see it too well on my paper, though. That's one of the issues. I get really close down here, you can see it, but it's not really that great. I see guidelines, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to come and reinforce my drawing now, but not very dark. You know, I'm just using my graphite very lightly to show where some of these things are. Sometimes people don't even do the drawing, you know, if they just want a loose painting, they just start painting, but I'm showing you this because this is more of the approach you would take if you're doing more of a realistic kind of a thing. You don't want your drawing to be too dark, or when you paint and you put watercolor over it, it would be something you couldn't remove. I forgot to draw in part of this cup. I forgot to put in the little ellipse down here. Seems like a lot of work, doesn't it, just to get this far?
You make it look easy though, Sylvia.
Oh,
You're a good drawer.
well, you know, the years of practice. People ask me about teaching drawing, but to be honest, I could do it, but I think I've gotten to the point where I just really love to be expressive, and I'm not as concerned anymore about things being completely accurate. And so it's a little painful to me. I probably have post-traumatic syndrome from doing renderings, you know, where you had to have everything really exact.
Yeah, that can get old.
Oh, yeah.
I do that too. I go from being very abstract sometimes, just playing, and then, but I love the detail. That's my problem. I can't get out of it. I
Well,
keep going.
you probably noticed even when I say I'm going to work really loosely, I can't seem to do it, huh?
Right. It's okay. That's the way you like it.
Yeah. I think the main thing is to accept that whatever it is we do is our expression. And it doesn't really have to be one certain way.
We get to be more free when we put the water down and the watercolor in there and let it run around. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
More. Oh, good.
Yeah. So the way I like to start is like what you saw, where you just wet the shape first. So I'm going to start, I'll start with the pumpkin, and I'm going to start with yellow first. And I usually start with a transparent yellow. In this case, I'm using Aureolin yellow. And I think it's got a little bit of green in it because probably just from mixing other colors. So I'll start with that. I'm going to wet my shape first, though. It has a little yellow in it. And I'm cutting around the shape of the apple. And now I'll put stronger color in. And while it's wet, I'm going to come down to I'll go to my yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is another yellow that's a little bit cooler. In the areas down here where there's more darkness and shading, I'm putting it into the areas that have more shading. And on this edge.
Sylvia, you're just adding yellow ochre to a light yellow base?
Yes,
Okay,
at this point.
okay.
Now, while it's still wet, I'm going to come with some cat orange. And I'm looking at the segments, that I see in my photo. Because the segments are darker on the edge of the segment. Now I'm going to look for a more of a reddish tone. So I like kind of a glow. So I'm going to put opera, believe it or not. In some of this area that I see some brighter tones. Now I see texture on this pumpkin. You know what I do when I see texture? You know what I want to do, don't you? If you've taken my class before.
Salt.
Yeah, I
Salt.
want to sprinkle salt on there. And while it's still wet, I'm also going to lift a few places, or well, not quite yet. I need to put in a few more darks. And so now I'm going to go to a little darker red, alizarin crimson.
How come Amora left and you didn't? How
What's-
come?
Diane? Okay. I'm going to go and build up some of these darks in some places while it's still damp. Okay, and you see little spots of darker tone down there. It's kind of, maybe it's quinacridone gold or something like that. So a little darker, orangey kind of a tone. And I'm putting it on, even though there's salt on there, I'm just putting it on even right over the salt. Okay, now I'm going to lift a little bit. What I mean by lifting is I've got a damp brush. I'm going to come back in and try to make it a little lighter in a couple of areas. Where I might have gotten a little too solid with my darks. Or come back in and add a little bit in places, like some little dots here and there. There's little bumps on this pumpkin. And just to get it a little darker, I'll add a little French ultramarine to it. Okay. So while that's drying, going to paint on, I think that I'll paint the green one in the background. And I'm going to make it kind of a blue-green. So I'm using Viridian. Just going to start with some Viridian, and I'm not wetting it this time. I'm going to sort of like, with just wet on dry, because it's kind of a speckled pumpkin. This might be a good one to use the sea salt on. Have to sprinkle a little more salt on. This is the sea salt actually on my pumpkin.
One of the first pumpkin pictures I painted, Sylvia, I painted some Indian corn. I'd
Oh,
never did it. And I people were laughing at me in class because I was painting each kernel of corn, with a different color. I didn't know how to do it any different, but I'm putting the little highlight in each one.
I bet it
I
was
still
delicious.
still have the painting.
Wow.
But it turned
I-
out great.
I- it did turn out good. It just took forever to paint those kernels of corn, each one.
Never forget the experience, right?
Yeah, and
That's,
people made fun of me, thinking I was crazy.
well, they just don't know the joy of getting something to look really realistic.
Right. I didn't know how to do that very well back then, but it was fun trying. I'll show you the painting. I
Okay,
have it. I have it framed in my living room. Actually, I didn't sell it.
okay. You can show it to us before we end the class if you want to.
Okay.
So you see, I'm painting close to the edge of my pumpkin, my orange one, but not touching it because I don't want that color to bleed into the other one, which it would do because that's somewhat wet. So I'll come back and I'll have to pay attention to that edge, but didn't want to do it right now.
Do you think that's a green pumpkin, or is that more like a squash of some sort, or a gourd?
Yeah, it must be. I called it a pumpkin, but it's got to be
It's a pumpkin shape, but I don't know if it's a pumpkin, but
so big.
yeah,
Or maybe it's all relative. Maybe this is one of those little tiny pumpkins.
maybe. Yeah.
I love Viridian. I love the color of Viridian.
It's pretty, it seems to dry up in the palette for me and sometimes get moldy for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, haven't noticed that.
Somebody told us that distilled water is less apt to get moldy, but I have yet to get some.
What
I
kind of
didn't know that.
distilled?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
maybe we should Google it to find out if that's true.
Yeah. But you'll get different viewpoints no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I've used just tap water. I don't go to my water purifier to get my water.
Mm.
So that could be that there's impurities. There's something in the viridian that just, for some reason, has a tendency to mold.
Yeah.
I have a problem with it just drying up
Oh, that
getting-
too.
and getting powdery.
Right. It's a weird color, weird for some reason. I tend to use the phthalo green or phthalo turquoise, I guess, and mix that with a little yellow to get that kind of color
Oh, yeah.
variations.
Not everybody has Viridian, so that's a good thing to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got some basic shapes going and I can come in now with a little bit of the Aurelian yellow and add in places where I see a little bit more of a yellowish tone. Try to vary this a little bit, makes it more intense. Just water it down slightly too for some of this area. I want some softness too, so I'm going to paint over some of the speckles so that they soften a little bit. Because this is in the distance, it's in the background, so I don't want it to pop out in front of the other things because I want it to kind of fade back. Okay, now I'll tackle the apple. And I see around the core or around the center stem, kind of a yellowish tone. And then a little bit of green. And some red. I always have a little bit of a struggle with red, so I'm going to show you something that I made, which I think is helpful. So I made these swatches of my colors, and I can look at these and see, okay, what color would be the most appropriate for that apple? And I'm looking at what I see in the photo. And I definitely see some of this darker color here. So now I'll turn it over and see what it is. That's alizarin crimson that I painted a swatch of from light to dark. And then there's this one, which is also alizarin crimson. Oops, I was just painting on my pumpkin because I had my brush in my hand. So, you know, in different intensity, maybe a different brand. I don't think I wrote the brand. But it helps to see those. And then I've got some of these violets for some of the darker tones. This is Permanent Rose plus Windsor Violet that I painted a combination of. If you start doing this, you'll start to see, get to know your colors better. So there's a little bit of this. This is cad red right here. So I see some of that, and then I see some of the alizarin crimson in there. So that helps me to know what colors to use. Now, I'm going to start with my cad red. I'm going to just check and make sure that is my cad red. Let me get a swatch here. Because I wrote on there what these things are, but I've had it for quite a while. And the writing faded, came off. And I'm going to do a swatch of this other red that I have too, because I don't know what it is. I need to do more swatches because I've added things to my palette and I don't know what they are. Okay. So yeah, that looks like cad red. But I don't know what this one is. It might be, do you think it's a quinacridone or something? Maybe. Right.
Could be like is it kind of orangey, quinacridone,
Yeah,
coral maybe or something?
it's a little more, it looks a little more toward a magenta to me on my paper, but on the video, things don't always look the same, do they? Well, you can't tell, but I could tell. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna start with the cad. It's a cad red is kind of a staining color. So I've got to be a little careful with it because I might want to lift some. So I just want to start with the areas that I think are a little bit lighter. I'm going to have to turn on a light. It's getting dark in here. Are you all ready for the rain?
It's already raining here.
It is?
Yeah, for 2 days.
It has? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, are you in,
Santa Rosa.
yeah, that's why. Yeah, you're up there. You've moved up north.
That's right.
How do you
we're
like
ready.
there?
We're ready for some rain here in Santa Barbara for sure.
Yeah.
Supposed to get quite a bit too.
All right.
You know what I'm going to do this weekend before it starts raining? I'm going to clean my roof. I have a metal roof. Because if I put simple green on it, I figure that when it rains, it's going to help to clean it. So I've got a long pole and a sponge, and I'm going to stand on the ground. Hopefully I don't have to get on a ladder. And I'm going to clean my roof. I couldn't get anybody to do it for me, so I'm going to do it myself.
Brave.
I know.
Don't fall.
Yeah, I'm careful.
Good.
Yeah, be careful. A friend of mine she was watering some plants in her kitchen on a little step ladder.
Yeah.
She missed a step and she landed on her bum and broke her second vertebrae and compressed a disc in her back. It was very painful. She couldn't even walk. She couldn't sit.
Oh,
Couldn't. She couldn't hardly do anything, but she's better now.
Well,
Yeah.
that scares me. I'll be really careful.
yeah, be really careful.
Okay, please do.
Why
Don't
don't
get on
you
a ladder.
let us know if you're going to do it, and at least we
Oh, so you can check up on me to make
Yeah.
sure I'm okay. That's a good idea because I don't really have anybody here except my cat.
What about your daughter? Isn't she there?
No, she's in New Orleans. I'm back in Ojai.
Oh, I thought you were in New Orleans.
No, I'm going to go in January or February.
Sylvia, I'm going to ask my friend who lives in Ojai if she has someone who could help you.
Oh, well, yeah, ask if somebody has somebody, I would love that. I found a guy who's going to come and help me with my gardening.
Nice.
And so that's good. And, you know, I asked him about it, but he's more of a gardener. He'd rather do the gardening stuff. So I just don't think he'll get to it if I have him do it. So, okay, what I'm doing now is I'm putting alizarin crimson over the cad red in the places that are darker, because I want to get a darker tone, but I want it to kind of blend together. So I'm dropping some of that in where I see it darker on the apple. But I'm leaving the white of the paper, as you can see, for some of the highlights. And it's very dark and down in here, and I can't really see what's going on, but I don't think I got the shape of the apple quite right. So I'll be adding a shadow in there too. All right, now there are some little dots, little white dots too that I did not save. So I don't know if I can save those. I'll probably have to come back in with gouache for those. All right, now I'm going to paint the cup. And here I'll just wet it first. And I'll start with a yellow ochre. Dropping it into the wet shape. I didn't draw the little stick that's sticking up there. Funny how you can just completely overlook something until you're actually painting it. Now it's a darker brown tone I'm putting on the very edge here of the yellow ochre. I'm gonna mix a little French ultramarine blue into it. And I really want to have it have kind of that runny look, so I'm dropping it into the wet areas. And I see some green in there too, so I'll drop some green in. Mixed it with some of the brown. And I think there's a texture on there that sort of looks like, you know, what happens when you splash water onto something. I just want to make sure I do it at the right time. So this is just water. And now I'll paint the walnut while I'm waiting for that. And this is one of those things to get honey out, isn't it? This little stick here.
Yes, honey.
Yeah, good. Anybody have any honeybees?
Mhm.
No? Isn't it Carolyn that has honeybees? In my other class, maybe she's not in this class.
Yeah, somebody in one of the classes did.
Yeah.
Linda Sterling has bees.
Oh, does she? That is so neat. All right, what time is it getting to be? Oh my goodness, we still have a whole hour.
Wow.
If you need to take a break, please do. You know, this class does go longer, so. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep adding some things. I think I will add the stick that I didn't draw in. I'll just add it now, paint it in. I lost my white rim, so I'm going to have to come back in and recover it. I think I made that go down too far. See if I can lift it.
Sylvia, could you describe about lifting and your best favorite ways to do that?
Yeah, you know, I had a scrubber brush that I lost, but generally I will wet my brush or wet the paper, and then I'll kind of scrub back and forth with my brush. And if it's not a staining color, it will go back down to the white of the paper. But I think while I was painting, since it's a clear brush, maybe it fell on the ground and I've got to go get another one. They're stiff, you know. Now what I'm doing is I'm gonna blot it with my paper because now it goes back pretty much to the lighter color anyway. It's just that I lost some of that nice shading I had. I'll just have to redo that. So yeah, if you're using a color that's not a staining color, one way to get back to the white is to lift it or just to get your brush wet and go back in and take off the paint. So I'm dropping French ultramarine blue into some of this area that's darker. It's actually over the leaf too, but I'm not quite ready to put it on there. But since I've got that on my brush, I'm going to come now and start darkening some other areas down in here. And I'm getting some violet in here. I want to start getting a little darker down in here. This is burnt sienna mixed in with some of the violet. And I'm going to sprinkle a little salt in there too. But this is the heavier salt. Okay. Well, I didn't put the pumpkin or the gourd way over like it is. I skipped that part. I'll just add a little bit more. Okay, so for these boards that are on the side, I'm going to do kind of a dry brush effect with a flat brush. So I'm just using some color I already have on here. And now I'm going to get a little of the violet that I have already on my palette. And some green. It's like Viridian, actually. It's a little strong. See if this is getting dry enough. I was waiting for some of the colors in the main objects to dry a little bit, so before I come back in with more detail.
Wow, it's raining again.
It's raining?
Yeah,
Well, that's so lucky that you're getting rain.
I think they get twice as much rain here as we did in Santa Barbara.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Turning everything green. I like that.
Oh, that's nice. How do you like your house, Donna?
I love it. It's like they redid the whole inside and everything is new. New
Wow,
carpet, new sinks, everything.
that's really nice.
Yeah, we were lucky.
So I'm going to try to make this look like it's sort of running, this glaze on this cup. There's some really bright reddish tone right at the edge here of this glaze. And here I had to make a choice as to whether it was going to get darker on the cup or on the gourd behind it. And I decided to get a little darker on the gourd. I made this a little too wide up here at the top. Now I have this brush that has the angle. I lost my scrubber that had that. So I'm going to come back in and scrape with this now a little bit in here where I just put this color. Because I want a little bit lighter areas and make it look a little bit more, textured. Yeah. Going to paint the leaf. So if you were in my other class, you've already done a painting of an autumn leaf. So what you remember probably from that is that if you paint the shape and then you drop some brighter color into the edge, it'll spread inside, and that's kind of a neat effect. And then you can make little dots on it, like little spots, you know. Sprinkle a little salt on it too. Now it's time to paint the stalks. We're back. How about that? Probably first place in the league, and first in power too, power ranking. This is a dark green that I've put some purple in. I'm trying to leave a little bit of the white of the paper. And now I'm getting some French ultramarine blue. Oops, I think I'll use a smaller brush. Okay, now I need to darken some of the areas behind the pumpkin so that the orange one will stand out more. Whoops. Didn't mean for that to happen. A little speck. It's amazing. This is still wet down here. This is a very bumpy stem on this gourd.
Looking at.
Getting really dark down in here. Because if I don't, the other things won't stand out as much, so. Painting on the walnut now.
Sylvia, what are you using for paint to do all that detail work?
It's a combination of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and a little bit of, I think there's a little bit of green in there too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, mostly it was colors I've been using that I just wanted to make a darker dark. It's always safe to go with the colors that you've been using because then there's more color uniformity. So now I'm gonna mix up the stem here for the apple. And it's ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And in order to make that, I need to make the apple feel a little bit more round too, just so the stem doesn't just stick out like a sore thumb. So I need to make other things darker around it. So got some green here. And now alizarin crimson, which was my darker red. And a little bit of ultramarine blue. I need to use a bigger brush. And more of that kind of a lime greenish tone I need in here in the apple. And remember I used cad red. I'm going to add a little more of that too. And a little more cad orange to put back in here into the pumpkin. I think I probably do need to put that little red pot back here just because I'm not very good at just making things up. So I'm going to stick it in here. Okay, what should we do about the background? We have a little time. I know we still have some other things to do, but I feel like I want to drop some color into the background. So, because I like the background in the photo, so I'm just going to wet it. I might make a indication of some leaves back there, but I'm not sure. Okay, and that looks like, let's see if I have a, maybe it's like a Payne's gray kind of a color. With a little bit of cobalt. This might be a good plastic wrap thing, actually.
Sylvia, what size brush are you using again?
24.
24, thank you.
Uh-huh.
It looks like some kind of a wreath or something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind
It does. I'm just going to indicate something like that. I'm not going to try to make it look too much like one. I'm just dropping colors in there kind of randomly back here.
Are you going to darken the stem on the green
Yes,
pumpkin? Yeah,
I am definitely.
doesn't show up much now.
It has to be darkened.
It's pretty though. What you got, it's beautiful.
Okay. Now this is a little more salt. You know, if you throw salt on sort of at an angle, this is some of the heavier salt, you get a different kind of a look if you toss it on at an angle. I don't know if that'll happen with this, but it's kind of a neat effect.
What does it do exactly when
It
you do
makes it,
that?
what it does is it makes it look like it's kind of sideways. Oh, I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's just, it's kind of a,
Little spray, a little bit of a spray effect.
right, a spray. That's a good word
Oh,
for it.
thank you.
Mhm. Oops, that didn't need to go where it went. Okay. I am going to work on the stem now. And down in here, I need to bring in some brighter colors into the leaf. It's funny when you paint something and it looks right to you when you paint it, and then all of a sudden you look again and it just completely disappeared because it dried.
Yeah, watercolor does that.
Sort of like, hey, what was that, just an illusion? Okay, so let me get in here now, and I'm looking at where it's darker. Is darker on the stem compared to the gourd. And then it's darker on the pumpkin or the gourd around it in certain places, what I call those points of darkness, you know. Maybe not quite that strong. Sometimes you just have to add some things that aren't really in the photo if you didn't draw it exactly right, so that things stand out more. And remember that you have more contrast up closer to you also. Guess it's time for me to put my glasses on if I can find them. When you get down to the detail, it's nice to wear your glasses, but I think I left them in the other room, so. Oh, here they are. Well, I didn't draw this quite right. I'm missing some of that little band that goes around the cup.
That's beautiful, Sylvia.
Oh, great, thank you. You know what I need to do now? I've got very few minutes left. I need to get my gouache. And there are places where I left kind of a halo. You see that? That's not too good. So I need to go around and look for places like that where I need to, it's what I call the cleaning up of the edges, but then also come in with the gouache to sort of highlight a few areas and make sure that what I want to stand out does stand out. So let me get that. It's in my bag. I need to put the little dots on the apple. This didn't get resolved either over on this side, but well. Okay, so I've got my tube of gouache and I'm not even putting it on my palette. I'm just getting some paint right off the tube. And now I'm looking at my apple and I see these wonderful little dots. Right on the, oops, it's a little too dry. I gotta get a little water. On the stem, I see a little bit of a highlight. So there are places here and there that could stand a little brighter highlight. Like on the rim of the cup.
Hi, Sylvia. I'm gonna go now. Good night.
Oh,
Bye, everyone.
okay, well,
Bye,
yeah,
Angela.
Okay.
Bye, Kathy.
Good night.
Night.
yeah, we've only got 10 more minutes, so I'm a little tired. I don't know about you guys, but
Long day.
yeah, especially because Anthula's on the East Coast. Is it 3 hours?
Yep, 3 hours.
Oh, it's 7:30 where she is. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, not so late, but it's been a long day.
Get a good night's sleep, Anthula.
You all have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I want to make this leaf stand out more. So I'm trying to add some of my brighter colors, like that red that we thought might be a quinacridone. But it's a kind of thing that, you see these things as you go along, but I'm going to put it aside and then look at it later after it's dry and flattens out a little bit and see what I think at that point. So why don't you guys go ahead? I'll make a voice thread and then you can put your whatever you do in there, and I'll do a little bit of a critique, but I want you all to comment to one another too, okay? So
Thank you, Sylvia.
You take care, okay?
That's lovely. My goodness.
Oh, it was fun.
Thank you so much.
Complex for beginners, so
It's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
apologize to the beginners. I don't expect everybody to do this. But,
Quite impressive. We know what to look forward to.
Thank you for
There you
saying
go.
that. That's reassuring. Thank you.
well,
Yeah.